Testing, testing, testing run-up time. All right. We got 5 minutes to run up. I'm actually in here and prepared today. Yay! Everything's cool. So we're on and ready to roll. So howdy, people. We got a little bit of time leading in. It's going to be a fun one today. Got some cool stuff to work on. So I'm going to go ahead and crack open ZBrush. I love it when my non-American friends call it ZBrush, because every time I hear ZBrush, I hear Pulp Fiction. You know, Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. Zed's dead. Alrighty, let's see. Did I say a thingy here? Thingy's a technical term for those who don't know. Thingies. That's what we deal in here. We deal in thingies and thingamabobs. Since we're not officially on yet, I need to go and kill Skype. Skype needs to go away for a while. Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm sitting here making stupid noises for the moment while I work my way up to this. If y'all could be in here during my normal work day, I drive people crazy. When I had, I don't have anybody actually working in the room with me anymore because Killian's off in his own space and Rebecca is not with us anymore. So I get to work alone, which is great because I would used to bug the crap out of everybody because I'll sit and sing and make stupid noises and just total freaking goofball the whole day. So we're in run-up time, so I'm just kind of like, doing my thing. Doing my thing. Rebecca says a reminder of Cartman in South Park when he'll be like trotting around by himself, singing, doodling, doing something. Yeah. Kind of Cartman. Where was I going with this? I was going somewhere with this. Yay! Yes! Preparation wins! That's right, y'all. I'm on the ball today. No hiccups and fumbles going on. I'm like a well-oiled professional. Well, a well-oiled professional. That's horrible. That sounds like a prostitute. Alright, well, since we have about 60 seconds till actual start 'em up time, I'm going to take a look over at the chat, see who all's here. I see Miss V, Susan, Anita, Henrico. I have to roll an R when I say your name. You cannot have the name Henrico without a rolled R, because it's just saucy. It's spicy, y'all. Sassy Griffox, Magic Bugs, Lobo. La, 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 la. All right. Well, folks, it is 1 o'clock, and we are off. We are back with another of our artist development seminars brought to you by CGBytes. I am Wes from 6S1 Media. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one today. So, going back into ZBrush for a fair amount of this one, probably the first half, since we do these in 2-hour sessions, probably going to be having the first half of this first hour be almost entirely in ZBrush, dealing with some modeling. And then we'll get into the basics of rigging these sorts of things. We're working with long dresses today. And just want to take a moment to encourage you folks who are here if you would, please, I would like for you to take a moment and maybe share the link to this stream in any of the social media circles that you traffic in, because you guys probably reach folks that we don't, and it's very beneficial stuff that I think I'm tossing out there, and who knows, just likes and shares and all that kind of stuff are kind of the currency of the day, and I really appreciate it when you guys do that, sharing the links and all that, especially when we're live, because if somebody just sees the link, they might click it, pop over and go, oh wow, there's this guy on there who he kind of sort of knows a little bit of what he's talking about. I'll check this out. So if you guys would toss out some likes and shares, help spread the word with this stuff a little bit, help us get some more viewers in here. And anyway, that's kind of it by way of introductions today. I do believe Miss Terry from CGBytes will not be with us again this week. She has some family issues taking place, that some kind of heavy stuff to deal with, and just keep her in the back of your mind there. She's cool people and does a lot of cool stuff with CGBytes. Really helps out a lot with you guys who are selling stuff there, and with helping manage things. So just kind of show a little love her way, and we'll hopefully she'll be back with us next week. So in the meantime, you have myself here and Mr. Jason on screen as 3D Loki. He'll be kind of keeping an eye on the chat while we get going with things. And I want to encourage you guys. I haven't really had as much interaction in these things as I expected. I'm kind of shocked by that, but I want to encourage you guys. Toss questions out there, and make sure that you that you speak up. I don't want anybody coming away going, well, he kind of showed this, but I wasn't sure or whatever. No, pipe up, jump in there. Make your voice known. Make your presence known, and give me your questions, and I'll do my absolute best to try and answer them and help you guys out. The whole point of why I'm here doing this is so that you guys can hopefully gain some new skills and really learn, learn this stuff in maybe a little more depth than what is available in a lot of other places. So. Make sure you take advantage of that, because that's kind of a cool thing. So anyway, let's jump in. So here on screen right now, we are in ZBrush. Zed is dead, baby. I love Pulp Fiction. We are in ZBrush, and you can see I've gone ahead and built this model, but I'm going to walk through kind of the basic approach to building something like this, or an approach. I could probably show you about a dozen different ways to get to this general end result. And a lot of the techniques you're going to choose in getting there are really a matter of personal preference, just the modeling approach that you're comfortable with. But I encourage you to look at a lot of different techniques and try them, because they all have little aspects to them that are good for one thing or another. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So, if I'm going into something and the methodology that I use is something maybe you already know and you'd like to see a different way to do something, make sure you ask about that. Definitely toss those questions out there about that sort of thing. So, let's see. And it looks like we have a question right off the top. Lobo, one question off the top, since we will deal with rigging. Will these techniques work with props? You know what? a lot of the stuff inside DAZ Studio ends up becoming the same file format. A prop is actually, there is rigging inside props even if you don't do anything to them. It's kind of weird, but just by default, by the way it builds things, it has, like, a prop will have a bone in it. It'll just have one bone if you don't do anything else to it. So in a sense, yeah, everything that we do in here is going to relate to props as well as clothing and other stuff, because in the end, we refer to things as figures or clothing or props or hair and all that kind of stuff, but in the end, there's actually no difference between any of them. They're all part of the same file format. They all follow the same structures. They all have the same component parts to them. The only reason that we ever refer to any of them as anything different than one another is entirely cosmetic. It's all on the surface. It's just, it's more intuitive to refer to as Genesis 3 male or female as a figure. People refer to, like we were talking before we started in the run-up, there was mention of Victoria 7. She's a character. She's not a figure. She's a character, but we'll refer to it that way. So your question actually leads into the topic of terminology that I deal with quite often, because there's a lot of miscommunication that happens in this field based around rather opaque terminologies that sort of obscure what the underlying material really is. So all that to say, yes, sort of. A prop is just a really simple form of rigging. So clothing is kind of like a prop on steroids. So I'd say that, depending on the kind of props you may have in mind, since that's, you asked the questions, props obviously in your mind, considering that, depending on whatever kind of props you may have in mind, some of what you'll pick up here today may or may not apply, but it's all relative. So let's see. So let's jump on into this now. I'm going to swing around here and take a look at what we have at the moment. This is just a quick sculpt I threw together, really, so I would have something as a guide. Just kind of spitballing where I was going to go with this. I did not retopologize this yet or anything like that. This is just Dynamesh still, and if we solo it out, you'll see that it even has its negative spaces are filled in. So, which interestingly enough, that actually makes a really great basis for things that go to 3D print, which is something I also work with from time to time. I do a decent amount of work in collectibles world. So let's just pop on in here. I've already obviously sent the Genesis 3 female over via GoZ from DAZ Studio. Pardon me. So let's switch subtools over to her, and I'll hide my initial dress, and you can see this masking I have on here. I've subdivided her up. She has 4 levels of subdivision, and I've drawn some basic masking on that really is guiding the parts of a dress that would be touching the body here. Obviously, you can't paint on for the inside of the legs, for the areas that would cross over here, that would cover, because there's nothing there. So the first method that I'm going to show you in modeling a dress is this one, where we'll take a subdivided mesh, paint a mask on it, and let's just clear that off, and I'll paint the mask again just so you can see it, because in painting masks, you can have a lot of fun and do some really cool things that help get your design started. So I have symmetry turned on. I'm going to hold the control key and drag my focal shift down to -100 so I get a nice crisp line. Then if I want to have a nice smooth line, a little more finesse over the strokes that I draw, I'll hold down control, which engages my masking brush, and then go to stroke, and we're going to turn on lazy mouse. Now that's going to enable lazy mouse for my masking brush, and we'll just start off with that lazy radius at 30 by default. So now let's just come in, and now you can see how smoothly that's going to draw in there. So we can just paint that in. Now this isn't a perfect mask because we are at 4 subdivisions. It's 1,000,000 polygons, but it's still low enough that we'll see some jaggies there. But that's okay. This is going to end up smoothing out once it becomes mesh anyway. So let's just go in here and use this to paint in some more of our masking. Let's make the brush a little bigger so we start getting some larger areas. And then I'll just come in and paint in this area here. Okay. And maybe I'll do this one backless. Backless is kind of cool. Let's go in. Nice low back dress like that. When it comes to the parts of a dress that are on the torso, you really have a lot of freedom because the rigging there is virtually identical most of the time to what you would do on a shirt. Unless you do some kind of billowing sleeves or something, maybe a medieval sort of gown that has big sleeves, then you've got some things to think about. But something like this is very forgiving in the torso. So let's just come in here and maybe make this a little more provocative down the middle. Let's do something like that. Okay. And then from there, I'll hold the control key and just click off in space and drag the rest of my masking down past our hips. And let's actually I want to stop my masking just before anything starts branching off, like the buttocks or the thighs down here, just so that I have a nice flat bottom to it, because once I extract this, I'm going to be pulling that down to create the rest of the length of the dress. Okay. So now let's go to our extract menu under our subtools. And here you can see I already have this set. It's already set where I extracted earlier from this figure. It's already set to a very low value, 0.000, and then, there's an 8 there right now. You can do 0.001, probably be a sound value to use for that. Then I'll hit accept, and that's going to generate a new mesh from that masking as a new subtool. So, and if I just hit my down arrow key, that'll send me downwards to where that's been created. So now I'm turning on polyframe and just taking a quick look at this. And there's a few different ways that we could work with this from here. And this is kind of a nice decision-making point. Is once you've pulled your extraction from the initial mesh, then you kind of have some decisions to make about, do I want to go ahead and do a topology and just work from that topology, work straight to the end goal of my topology, or do I want to spend some more time in design mode and maybe convert this to Dynamesh? There are some different things to consider with that, and the thing that I find is if I go into Dynamesh mode, that is because maybe I'm spitballing, I don't have a design particularly in mind, and so I'll go into Dynamesh mode so I can use this as a base to sort of build out from. Sometimes if I have a very specific design in mind, though, I'll go straight on and like Z-remesh what I have here, with some caveats. I'll go into topology mode, mental topology mode, I should say. There's not something like that in the program. I'll kind of go into mental topology mode and start slinging clean topology and just work right on through with that. So what I'm going to do right now is actually going to be, I think, I'm veering towards kind of a hybrid of the two, where I'm going to keep a copy of this. I'm going to go ahead and start generating some topology, but maybe I have my copy saved so that I could do a little Dynameshing or something if I wanted to later. So let's go ahead and duplicate that subtool, and I'm going to call this one my Dynamesh Sculpt, just so I can see clearly, where I'm at. Labeling things is a good thing, and rather than just delete this interior group and then close it up, What I really want to do is keep some thickness to it. Like if I could delete this group, close it up, and Dynamesh it, and it's going to fill these holes. It's going to look kind of weird. There's different things that are going to happen then whenever I do things like polishing and smoothing on that Dynamesh once those holes are filled. It's going to relax back. It's going to behave very much like clay, which can be a good thing. But since I want to keep kind of a more garment-like volume in place, I really don't want to do that. I want to approach this a little differently. So what I'm going to do now is mask the remaining mesh that's visible. Make sure that that interior group is unmasked. And then I'm going to inflate that inward. Let's polish a little bit. And then I'm going to inflate that so that it creates a little more thickness. Because we created a very thin shell. And if I Dynamesh that shell right now, it's going to have pass-through. It's going to have little holes pop up in it and artifacts pop in it that are going to be very problematic. So I'm going to inflate it so that I have a little more thickness that gives me a higher tolerance on my Dynameshing. So let's go down to deformation and inflate, and we'll just crank that up a little tiny bit. Okay. And that might not be enough. We might have to kind of go back and forth a little bit and play around until we get a thickness that works. Okay. So, and also, before I go any further with that, I'm also going to take my border groups. So I make those visible, and then I just hide all of them except that bottom border group. I might even expand it a couple of times. Throw a quick little edge ring around it so it smooths out. Now if I mask just that, then I can take my Move Transpose tool, drag a straight line down. If you hold Shift, it'll snap straight. Now if I hold the Control key and Shift, click and drag, it will extrude that down. So now we get the length of our dress started. Okay. Of course, this is cutting through her thighs right now, but that's not really a big deal at the moment. Right now, we just want to have that length in place and with our volume began. So let's go ahead and make a couple of other small changes. I'm selecting the outer shell. I'm going to go ahead and smooth out the belly button. Maybe take a clay brush, touch that a little bit, or even take my H polish and hold the Alt key, and you'll see that it tries to flatten that outward. It'll pull it out to try and match the height of the mesh around it. So now we have all of that stuff in place. Now let's go up to our geometry menu, go into Dynamesh, and we're probably going to have to play around with these values just a little bit. That's kind of a common thing. So let's start off with a value around 400, and we'll hit Dynamesh, give that just a minute. That might be a little too high of a value. We'll see. Now it gives us 87,000 polys. We have a nice thickness that is very workable. I think I'm going to undo that and go a little higher than the 400 range. Let's go up to maybe about 8 or 900. Let's go up to 900 and Dynamesh that. Now we should end up with about 150, 160,000 polys. Okay. So we can give that just a second. It takes it a minute to calculate that volume. And it's working. It's working. Come on, ZBrush. Yeah, I might have turned it up a little too high. Yeah, it's projecting that now. It's trying to project the details from that. So, okay, I guess I did as exponential. I'm sorry about that. It ended up 428,000 polys. So let's undo that and go to around 600 range. It ought to give us a little more than we had a minute ago, but not near as much as that was. So this is kind of an ongoing thing too. With Dynamesh, you'll oftentimes have to check it, backpedal, check it again. And here we are at 194,000 polys, And that's a pretty solid place to be for a design sculpt. Okay, so now let's unsolo that so we can see this against the underlying figure. And I'll do some quick sculpting on this, starting off with some smoothing. Let's mask off the bottom half of this, or the top half I should say, and then do a little bit of polishing on it. Okay. And then let's take a move brush, and we're just going to bring that out past her hips a bit. There's the tummy. Now her bottom. Okay. And a little bit around the calves. And we can turn on transparency and kind of check. If we wanted this to be really form-fitting, we could. I'm not a big fan of the form-fitting dresses. I like seeing some things flow and move. So I might go in and do something like this to kind of flare it a little bit. This is where I would turn on symmetry and throw a transpose line out here, then move it kind of to the center of my selection with scaling. And scale it up a little bit, maybe move it down, and then let's come in here and just start polishing that a bit. I think I polished it too much, and it's going to hang up for a second. It's still hanging up, so give it just a moment. There we go. That was magical. So I probably did that a little too much, but that's okay. It's still, this is all design phase stuff, so it's kind of the fun part. This is the part where your mistakes really aren't mistakes; they're just part of the game. So just take my move brush, pull some of this stuff in. I tend to use the move brush a lot for establishing volume and getting things just kind of generally in place. And I'll just take a standard brush, turn that transparency off, and start some basic sculpting. Nothing huge, just a little bit. Lots of smoothing going on. Lots of smoothing. That, and of course I still have symmetry turned on. So, and I tend to work on a dress. I might work from the outside in with symmetry on, keeping that symmetry turned on for the outer portions, the things that like it doesn't really matter if it's symmetrical from left to right on the outside, because if you see the symmetry, you see it from over here, from this side, you're not seeing the other side, so you don't notice that symmetry. But once I come to the center, I'm going to end up breaking symmetry quite a bit on dresses, because symmetry is not natural for cloth. So unless it's a tight-fitting garment that has intentional symmetry in its design, I will avoid using symmetry down the center. So, for instance, here we're in the back of the dress. So back here, I'm going to start kind of connecting some of these things together and building in some asymmetry, because it just makes things so much more natural. And at some point, if you guys are interested, I would actually enjoy doing some material dealing specifically with things to think about when sculpting. Things like sculpting cloth, and just like kind of the rules of cloth folding, because one of the things that I see in a lot of artwork in the content world, a lot of clothing, is I see really just horrifically sculpted cloth, or cloth, or things that are supposed to be cloth that have no sculpting at all. And it's one of those little things. It's like when you look at the really good content, the stuff that just looks so believable, versus, you know, maybe some stuff that's not so great. One of the things that I consistently find fault with is the just the work on the actual shaping of cloth. I know a lot of folks now are starting to try to use things like Marvelous Designer, different cloth simulation methods and things like that as sort of a means of getting there, you know, getting that natural clothiness. But I am of the opinion that there is really no replacement for just knowing how to draw and paint and sculpt the stuff, you know, for really real. I mean, simulations, in theory, they sound great because it's like, oh, it's a simulation. It's going to be just like the real thing. Yeah, not so much. I mean, it's cool, and it can look good. I'm not saying that it's bad, but what I'm saying is, by virtue of being simulations, when you use those, you're looking at a randomness that is probably going to run counter to your design. That may sound weird, but it's true. It's like when you design, you want the appearance of chaos, but it's not chaos. You're actually controlling it every step of the way as an artist, and so there's that's part of the art of doing this stuff. I think is in how you make those choices, what you choose to control, you know, the lines and things that you place, and all that kind of stuff. So when you're using things like Marvelous Designer, you're kind of giving away a lot of that to the program and its algorithms, which has its place. It's not a bad thing. But from an artistic standpoint, especially from the standpoint of products, I much prefer, and this is not like a personal preference thing, it's just like I can look at that stuff, and usually I can tell when people have sculpted it and really put, you know, that kind of direct design thought into the flow of fabrics and then the way those things work. And consistently, I find that I enjoy that more. I look at it more, and it seems more artistic and interesting, and you know, just that's what appeals to me. So that's what I tend to do. So anyway, that's kind of my little mini rant. It's not really a rant because I'm not going to fault anybody for using something like that, but I still and if you can use that and combine it with good sculpting and good, you know, just art fundamentals, then the two together are crazy powerful. So, but still, you know, that those fundamentals are kind of important. There we go. So let's smooth that out just a little tiny bit. Relax some of those wrinkles. I like how that's coming out. All right. So now let's work on some tightness around the torso. Let's put some tension coming in from the breasts. And then a little bit of tension going across. And this is really, you know, again, this is just design sculpt phase. So, you know, this is not something that needs to be super, super detailed at this point because it is still just Dynamesh right here. I always like to give a little bit of love to that area, right around the hips. I think that really pulls things apart, gives you some nice sense of tension and stress. Here I'm just taking the H polish and pulling this out so we kind of fill in some of this indentation down the center. Okay. So there's a pretty decent kind of quick sculpt for you for a dress design. Nice low back, you know, strap around the neck, dealio. I dig that sort of thing. I think that's kind of classy. Let's maybe give a quick look up here around the neck. I'm really just going to smooth that stuff out, knowing that it's going to end up pressing into the underlying figure a bit. So when you're doing a concept sculpt like this for a clothing design, it really is. It's just concept. So there's lots of things that you can get away with and stuff that I don't think you really need to worry too much about. Let's do a little bit of smoothing or polishing right here. Helps make those edges kind of come back together a bit. So, and this is kind of a good place, I think, to stop with a concept sculpt for a garment like this. So that kind of shows you my workflow for dealing with Dynamesh and doing the concept phase. From there, I'll take this and duplicate the subtool, right? And let's call this one Dress Topo 1, because I'm also going to show you another approach to this in just a minute. So here I'm going to take Dress Topo 1, the copy that I just made, and I should still have polygroups saved in it from when we extracted it. So the Dynamesh will try to keep those polygroups. So the nice thing about that is that allows me to then hide all those interior polys that I know I don't need. And then I can hit Control E a few times, and that's creating edge loops around the outside of this. I want to smooth those edge loops, but right now if I smooth or polish this, it's going to lose a lot of those little details that I kind of sculpted in. Now most of those are probably going to get lost anyway when it goes low res and becomes a topology, but I want to try to maintain the integrity of that stuff as much as possible. You know, it's like I don't want to get rid of it if I don't have to, and just kind of let it work its way out naturally. So that in mind, then I'm going to invert my selection so that interior is shown, and I'm going to expand my selection out a few times until I see the very edge of that orange outer group appear. So let's just walk this back a little bit. So I'm going to mask that outside, leaving the inside and all those new little bitty edge loops unmasked. Blur my mask, and now I'll polish this. So that's going to give me a much cleaner edge than what I had initially with my polygroups from Dynamesh. Okay, so now I have some nice clean edges there. The reason those clean edges become important is when we go to do a retopology on this, if we have jaggy edges there, then that's just jaggedness that ZBrush is going to try to calculate with Z-Remesher. So working with a cleaner edge around your mesh helps us ensure that we're going to get a better translation through Z-Remesh when we go through that process. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to Modify Topology and Delete Hidden. Okay. So now we have just this shell that we wanted. And right now that's at 103,000 polygons. So I know that I don't want anywhere near that. I'm going to try to keep this around 10,000 polygons. That's probably a good range for a dress like this, because once you add in subdivision inside DAZ Studio or any other modeling app that's going to go to, once you add that subdivision in, you know, then you've got 40,000 polys, and that's plenty to hold whatever details you want. So let's go to Z-Remesher, and I'm going to keep symmetry turned on, which I know is going to kill some of those little things down the middle. Although, you know what? Actually, let's turn that off. I'm always kind of torn on that. If I keep it on, I know I get a clean topo. If I turn it off, I start keeping those details. It's really kind of kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing. But I'm pretty sure that we can project most of those details back very easily in the end. So I'm going to keep my symmetry turned on. And let's set our target poly count to, let's actually shoot a little low and set it to 5. That'll give us 5,000, or in the range of 5,000 polys. I'm going to turn off adaptive, and let's hit Z-remesher and see what we get. So let's let that chug for just a moment. And while that's running, I'm going to take a quick peek over at the chat. Okay. So Lobo, in reference to his earlier question about rigging, more like doors and lids and such, you know, if you'd like, I could probably add that as a subject for a future piece. We are scheduled. I have my topics scheduled throughout the remainder of March, but it is coming toward the end of the quarter, which means it's time for me to build up my schedule for the next quarter, and that's actually a really good subject. There's a lot of cool stuff that can be done like that, and there's a lot of room in our market for nice environments, you know, interactive props, things that are other than organic or clothing but have rigging. So that's something that that I definitely will take note of. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm looking for that kind of input sometimes too. If you guys have topics that you want to hear me, you know, get into, by all means, please share those. Give me those suggestions, because you know, we're coming into the time right now, like I said, where I am assembling my schedule of topics for the next run, so I'm listening to you guys, and I want to make sure that I give you guys, you know, some stuff that's going to be helpful. So here we can see the topology generated from that. You can see here how it created, how it works symmetrically. So it took the detail from the right side and copies it over to the left. So, and that's not a bad thing. That's really not. I'm going to topologize this again, though. Set to same. Actually, this gave us 9,000. It's funny, you can plug it in and tell it you want 5,000, but it could end up giving you a lot more. It kind of has some leeway in how it's going to calculate that. So let's make sure symmetry is turned on. I'm going to hit, I'm going to plug this back down to 5 again and hit Z-remesher again. And so this time it's refined that a little bit more. There you see we're getting a really nice clean topology out of that. Very handy. And if I wanted to keep refining that, I could. I could hit same, and that'll keep us coming in at roughly that same poly count. It's interesting, it keeps bouncing that number up on me. I'm going to change that to 5 again, and hold the Alt key and let it use a different algorithm. There's actually 3 different algorithms ZBrush has in it with Z-remesher. There's the adaptive, normal, and then there's the alternative that you hold the Alt key for. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and hit Z-remesher, and that should try to force it even closer to my poly count, although it says remeshing error, remesh aborted. I wonder what caused that. That's interesting. So sometimes if you just change the shape just a little tiny bit, there I smoothed it or polished it just a little bit, and then run it again if it gives an error, then there we go. Now we're just under 5,000 polys. Super squeaky clean mesh right there. That's great. That'll UV very smoothly. Nice topology. That's going to give us all the room we need to make whatever details and things we want. So we could run with that all day long. That's going to be great. And just for the sake of seeing how it translates, let's do a couple of subdivisions on this. Run it up to 300-some thousand polys right now. And we'll just do a quick projection of our design sculpt into this mesh at 300,000 polys. And give that just a moment while that's running. I'm going to look back over at the chat. Lobo says the issue I'm running into is object's origin did not transfer right from the modeler to DAZ. That is a common problem, and I'll definitely send me some notes on that. Send me some questions and thoughts you have on that, and or post them in the group that we have on Facebook, because I do check that very frequently, and I get notifications of that. I actually get notifications that push to my phone. So so I'm literally always on for you guys. You post things in there, and I will get it. So and I'll keep track of that stuff and make sure that I get that on deck for you. So Nick Silver says hi. Hey Nick, thanks for joining us. So here you can see a quick projection of our original details into this new topology. That would probably take a couple tries to get that stuff perfect, which is not that hard to do. We just smooth it out a little bit more. We could smooth it and then go in and just kind of locally tweak the shape a little so that it takes that that shape a little better. Projection is not a one-shot fix for your shapes, by the way. I find that projecting is kind of it's something you really need to do with iterations, you know. So like here, sometimes you have to change things, move things around. Just it's a tweaky process. Let's see. And so I'm running a projection. I'm checking the chat. Over in the chat, River says maybe a class on advanced UV mapping, maybe in how to prepare something for Substance Painter. Oh, there's mention of Substance Painter. Oh my God, that's kind of my new playground. So I've been, so UVs are definitely a good subject to get into. There's a lot of room to to play around with UVs. There's lots of cool things you can do with them. They have an effect on so many different areas of a model. That's a good topic in and of itself to get into. So and again, that's another one that I definitely should put on deck and probably do a a class or two at some point just on UVs. I hear a lot of people talk about UVs as though they're just a black art, and in some ways they are. They're very frustrating. But you also mentioned Substance Painter, and I got to say, I recently, I'm kind of late coming to the whole Substance Painter, Substance Designer party, but it's cool. It's cool. There's some cool stuff there. It's not the be-all, end-all make texture button that I think a lot of people want to believe that it is. But there is some powerful stuff in there. If you do not have the algorithmic Substance suite of tools with Painter, Designer, and B2M, holy crap, get B2M. If you're not springing for the entire suite, you're selling yourself short. You've got to get B2M. It's bitmap to material. There are some things that, and I'm very likely to take an entire month coming up, just 4 solid weeks of nothing but dealing with Substance, because the stuff that we can do coming out of that program, or those programs, that suite of programs, it's obscene. It's the uses for it are so varied and strong. It's amazing. And there are some tricks that I've kind of come up with already, working back and forth between Substance and ZBrush, that will blow your mind. And you'll actually see some of those in effect with the freebie that I understand Terry should be having that come out tonight. There's a freebie that I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball, guys. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. I had some freebies that you guys saw, I think it was like a week or two ago. We were doing the geografting seminars, and I did these kind of cybernetic leg stumps. And I went ahead and actually I'm going to take just a moment to show you guys what's coming your way as a freebie tonight, because it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. If you guys remember the leg stumps, here's where that ended up. So remember, the one week we had done the bases on the legs, and then another week I had done, I think, the insets on the chest and the little lights going up over her ears. So I want you guys to see this. These are actually the promo images that will be going out into the store with this kit. And the reason I bring this up is that, there was mention there of the substance stuff, and this stuff was textured using a combination of techniques I came up with working between ZBrush and Substance Designer and Substance Painter. So it's some fun stuff, man. Some really fun stuff. We don't have the link handy for this just yet, but it will be going live tonight, is my understanding. And just a lot of fun with this. So I might even, after this goes out, I might even come back and open this during part of a future seminar, so you guys can kind of walk through it with me and maybe look at pieces of it and ask questions. And it's also, and I'm definitely going to end up doing at least a video, maybe if not, maybe an entire seminar, showing you guys ways to build off of what's here. Because it's just, there's a lot of fun stuff, and there's a modularity to the way that I built this. Like I built these legs to show how to add on from the bases that I made. Then there's insets on the body, and I've added all this machinery to those insets. So it's a neat thing. So anyway, since it was mentioned, I couldn't resist kind of showing that. So, but that was some fun stuff. So over in the chat, let's see, Limba Zero asks, what version of Substance Painter are you using? I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I know it's the latest one because I have the subscription to the full suite from Algorithmic. And so whenever they toss out an update, and they toss them out frequently, believe me, I think they've updated it like 4 times since I got my subscription a month ago. But the updates seem solid. It's kind of an ongoing thing, and I think this is becoming kind of a standard paradigm for a lot of software now, is to do sort of live updates where they're constantly in bug fix mode, which on the one hand, I wish that people would release stuff that's maybe a little more stable out of the gate, but I do like this ongoing sense of support. So it's more of a, so that, I mean, you're buying a license, you're buying a subscription basically anyway, so you might as well get some support after the sale with it, and I appreciate the way they're doing that. So anyway, that's kind of a little sneak peek at some of the stuff I've been doing with that. Like I said, I textured most of that with a combination of ZBrush, Substance Painter, and Substance Designer. In the course of it, I built new substance material networks and did all kinds of stuff. It was really neat, a lot of fun, and kind of addicting. So there's a number of things that I want to get into with that down the road. So, but at the moment, we have a dress to work on, so I'm going to try to get focused back onto this. Here you can see the results of that last projection. So very tight. Here we have great topology on this. Tight details projected back out. That is really ready to UV and finish. And I really dig that. And that's just working from my Dynamesh methodology there. So the other route that I would take, I'm going to kind of sidestep from that and do a quick topology and show you kind of the topological route that you could take instead of using Dynamesh. And it's probably about as quick. It's very similar in some respects, and it's just about as quick, but it's a different way of thinking. So if I were going to work in a more topological focused way, what I would do is I would come back to my original projection, or my original extraction, and I'll hide the interior pieces and then delete hidden. So this time we're not going to have any kind of shell, any kind of thickness to work from. And I'm immediately going to Z-remesh just what we have right here. Okay, so let's turn on symmetry, and we'll just go ahead and Z-remesh, and this I'm going to set to maybe 1,000 polys. So let's Z-remesh that. I like the idea of giving you guys kind of a couple different ways of looking at the task of modeling something like this. So there, we took that down to 2,000 polys. Now I'm going to set this to same, hold the Alt key, and just hit Z-remesh 2 or 3 times and let it refine itself. So now we have that as a nice smooth little mesh. And then from there, I'm going to close the holes up momentarily. And then you see I've masked everything except the bottom piece. And then I will, again, just like I did on the Dynamesh version, I'm taking a transpose tool, transpose move tool, making a straight line downward, then holding Control and Shift to extrude that bottom straight down. Then from there, I can pull this out to the sides, scale it just a little tiny bit. Let's take our move brush and kind of move our extremities of that shape out to where I can see how they match our design sculpt. Roughly, doesn't have to be exact. Okay. Then let's move that down just a touch further. Lift the front a little. And just try to make that generally match. Okay. So now I'm going to hide those the whole closed groups. Delete hidden. And we need to add some resolution down the vertical length of the dress. So I'll take the Z modeler and hold my my pointer over an edge, hold spacebar. We have insert by default is selected. Let's change that to multiple edge loops, and we'll just click and drag and stop when we're around 5,000 polys. And there we have a nice topology for that. Okay, so then from there, I'm going to just very gently, I'm going to take my smooth tool, kind of smooth a little bit of that tummy topology out so it just kind of becomes a little bit more natural. And then I'm going to mask off sections and start projecting this. Okay, so here we'll project this against our sculpt and smooth it out just a little bit. This is a low-res mesh right now, so it's not really going to pick up a lot of details. We're really just pushing the volume out so that it matches our design sculpt. And I might even want to increase my projection distance just a little tiny bit. I'll go back and forth between projection and polish. There we go. Now let's do this. Tiny polish. You don't want to polish too much around open edges because you end up with shrinkage. And there we have the basis of our shape. And you can see that 5,000 polys actually holds that shape really, really well. And if I hit D, so we see that smoothed subdivided preview, you see that a lot of that is actually translating into this really, really well. So let's add a couple of subdivisions now. So here it's 79,000, and we'll project that. So here you can see 79,000 polys of subdivided resolution, and our shape translates over into that really, really well. And if we look at these, just comparing them, okay, here we have our original Dynamesh sculpt. Here we have dress topology 1. Okay, and that was the one created direct from the Dynamesh sculpt. And then here we have the topology that I just made through the other method of working straight to the topology. You'll see that they're actually extremely similar. There's only just some minor little differences in the way the polys flow between them. So I kind of prefer actually what we got from the initial Dynamesh sculpt. I kind of like this topology a little better, the way it flows up from the breasts, and I know that that kind of resolution in this vertical topology will allow me to get some nice tiny little stress folds and creases in my final mesh, or my final sculpt. So that's the one I'm going to kind of choose to go with here, although this one also has some real benefits to it in just the way the topology is distributed. So, but you can see, I mean, one is 4994, the other one is 5033. They're their poly counts are right in the ballpark of each other. So I think that's kind of cool, you know, that you have these different ways of working to virtually the same end result. So from there, I'm just going to pick one of these because the next phase of this is going to be doing the UVs on it, which I'm going to do very, very quickly because I don't want to spend all day just on modeling and everything. So I'm going to shoot some UVs, then I'm going to do some very fast texturing on this so that we have a textured model to then spend the next hour working with inside Dash Studio. So let's go ahead and knock out UVs on this. Let's go to Dress Topo 1, and that's the one, like I said, that was created from Z-remeshing our Dynamesh. So, and I'm just going to hide everything except our Genesis female. Let's take the move brush, and at the lowest subdivision, which is really our base mesh, I like to make sure that I tweak out any little things that I see, any little mesh intersections that happen there. And also, since I have subdivisions on this, another nifty little trick to make sure this is really going to fit well is to project the lowest subdivision against the figure. That way I know that this is dead on tight, because then those details will still pop back out at the higher subdivisions. So here we get an even more refined topology and shape conforming to her figure. Okay. So then from there, I'm going to come back over with my inflate brush and a very low value, like 5 or less. Probably I'm going to go to like 2 and just gently brush over that so that it brings that dress mesh back over top of her. Okay. Here we go. And over the collar. And now that is really finished and ready to roll. So since we have subdivision on this, and I don't want to lose that subdivision, I'm going to generate my UVs on a copy. So let's go into UV Master, and I'm going to hit Work on Clone. That's going to give us a temporary copy labeled CL. You'll see that it prefixes CL onto its subtool and moves it over into its own subtool. It's not appended. So then I'll take this copy and make some cuts, make some poly groups. I don't want to actually change the topology at all, but I want to work with my poly groups to create groups that I know are going to automatically break out into UV shells really well. So let's go in. Here you can see I'm looking at nice logical groups, logical ways to break this up. Okay. And I think that should work out really well. Or if I wanted, this is another consideration in doing clothing, okay? Sometimes you want to make sure with clothing that you actually break up your UVs into panels that maybe correspond to the panels that would be in the actual garment. So let's say this dress has 4 parts. Let's say it has 2 different panels that meet with a seam in the back for the strap area. And then let's say that we have a top panel to it. If we go ahead and group our UVs or group our mesh based on this paneled approach, then we're going to end up getting UVs that correspond to those panels. So then those panels of cloth, when textured, they're going to have UV seams. But that's okay because the seams are going to fall where the actual seams in the garment would fall, and it actually adds to the detail, the crispness of those seams. So you're kind of using the nature of how UVs work to play, using something that could be a detriment as a strength. And it's a good strategy for really improving the way your clothing, or way just about any kind of model looks. If you leverage where those UV seams are going to fall, to be in places where hard edges should happen or where different surfaces should meet, things like that, you can leverage that aspect of UVs to your advantage. So I'm looking at this a little bit more. I think I actually want to make this panel start really right from the hips. So let's work with that from there. So now that I have my poly groups set up, corresponding to the panels that I know I want in my garment. I'm going to go into UV Master, turn on polygroups and symmetry, since it's a generally symmetrical model. The topology is symmetrical, even if the actual shape isn't completely. And then we will hit unwrap. And just a couple seconds. Now let's flatten that and see what we get. And here you can see we have some pretty solid UVs. They're just not organized well. So that's kind of the next part of this, is organizing these UVs. So let's take just a moment and do that. That's kind of something you can actually spend a lot of time talking about. I'm going to kind of blast through it. So let's go through and just very quickly rotate some of this stuff around. Hopefully, I think I just rotated that 180 degrees other than where it should be. So let's move that. You'll see too that I've turned on, went into my brush menu and turned on auto masking and cranked up mask by polygroups to 100. That way it, my transpose tools or any tools that I use out in here will only work, they'll only be active then on the first polygroup that I touch. So now let's do that and do that. And I think that I'm just about where I want to be. So let's turn, oh, this is another handy little trick. If I have mask by polygroups turned on, I can then just regroup a set of polygons and then move the two of them together and make some more edits to that. So this is such a clean little topology that the UV Master has done a great job of working with this. And I'm also going to take this as a moment to touch on a question that I was asked. I think River might have sent me this question yesterday sometime. If not, it was somebody else. I can't remember who. But someone had asked me, is there a way to snap edges in, UV edges in ZBrush? And there sort of is, but it's a quirky, weird workflow. I haven't seen anybody else do it. I'm sure somebody does, but it's just something I stumbled onto. So, take this as you will. If I want to snap the bottom edge of this panel here that I know is to the top of the dress, I can come in here with my Z modeler, which you typically might not think about using inside UV editing. You definitely don't want to accidentally do anything to any polygons, because then it will break the whole connection and screw up all kinds of stuff from UV Master. You don't want to do that. The only thing you want to work with in here is things that move vertices or move edges. So if I'm going to use Z Modeler inside UV Master, the first thing I'll do is save myself from screwing up by holding over a polygon and setting my polygon actions to do nothing. So then the next thing I'm going to do in order to snap this line is I'll hold my pointer over that edge, hold the space bar. There's a few different ways, a few different tools we can use here. I'm going to choose the transpose tool and edge loop complete. And there you'll see then once I have that, when I click on this, it masks that. Now I'm not actually going to use that transpose tool to move that. What I'm going to do is actually I'll hold Control and Shift and go get a clip curve and then draw a clip curve out. Boom, there you see how it snaps. So let's just isolate that so you can see. So then if I invert my mask from there and then maybe mask the top of this and I polish, you'll see then that's going to average this stuff downward. Since this is generally symmetrical, we could then turn on local symmetry and maybe move topological and turn on symmetry. And now we can just kind of do some general movement out there and a little bit of smoothing. Let's take Z Modeler again, grab that guy, snap him one more time since our smoothing kind of killed it. And then let's take Z Modeler and mask those outer edges, okay? And then we can drag a mask over this. So now I can then smooth, and that's going to relax to the inside. that'll open it up and give us some breathing room around those edges. Okay. And then let's just do a little bit more movement here. You can get really kind of granular in your details with how you edit UVs using these methods too. It's kind of great. It can get a little boring trying to show it in something like this, but that gives you a good idea of where I'm at with that, what I'm doing with it, the capabilities of it. Let's go through and make one more little edit to this. Now, since it's not truly symmetrical, it might not always want to work out just right. So there we have that that group or that edge selected, and we could just snap that guy straight. Now let's grab this one, snap him straight. Let's see if that allows us any kind of symmetry on it. Nope, it's still not quite symmetrical there. That's fine. Not a big deal. We should be able to mask those outer edges. And let's mask the bottom of that. And then we can just come through here. I don't want to lose my my spacing on these polys around the top, but I do want to make sure that I get this nice even spread. So now you can see just the spacing of these polys and these UVs are going to give us some really great stuff to work with. You can apply a lot of different things to that. Okay, looks like I need to work this side upward a little bit. Let's just do that. And there's other things you can do with ZModeler inside here too. Like we hold over an edge and we go to a slide. Let's do edge loop partial. So then we can slide that around. I still want to make sure that I have those outer boundaries masked. Here, let's just slide some of that. So you can go in here and get just crazy kind of detailed with the way that you approach tweaking out your UVs. Okay, so now let's just move this up a bit. And also looking at this UV map now, every once in a while I like to pop out of UV Master and back in, just because sometimes it likes to move things around, and I like to give it that chance so that I know I'm working to it and letting it have its way a little bit. I know it sounds kind of weird, but I find that there's kind of a way that it likes to behave. So the other thing that I want to do here is mask off these top edges all the way to here. Since I know these wrap around to each other pretty much anyway, I want to mask those off and snap them nice and solid, like so. And then once you have outer edges as square as that is, then you can just mask that stuff all off for the most part and start polishing it, and you'll see you start getting this great spread. Okay. So it's so funny. I get very OCD on this kind of thing with UVs, but it pays off. It pays off. So right here, I've masked everything except these guys down the side, and I'll polish that so that they shrink in. Now they're doing this weird bow thing, which is fine because we're going to straighten that out. But what it's allowing them to do is gain their average vertically. So then from there, I can select. I can use my transpose to grab that edge, and by now those might have come symmetrical again. So let's try it with symmetry on. Let's see what we get. Yes, now that those have come symmetrical again, I will snap them like so, and now I move those out. Let's mask the top, and now the bottom. And now we do this little dance again. And there you see how straight we can make those UVs get. Now that will hold any tiling texture pretty well right there. So it looks like we're a little oblong here to this side. So let's just try and pull this in, use my grid a little bit here, sort of sight up what I'm doing. Doesn't have to be exact, I like for it to be pretty. Alright, so there's the top. That's nice and solid. Now it makes me want to square the bottom up really badly, which isn't that hard to do. There's actually some neat ways that we can do that. Like if we take the clip rectangle, clip that down to a rectangle like this, it's actually forcing outer edges in, so that's not good. But then when we relax that, you'll see how square that makes it. And that's actually really handy. Okay, so now let's turn our smoothing up and turn on some symmetry, smooth that out a little bit. And we're getting a little bit of variation down the sides, but it's not a lot. I mean, that's really close to square. Got to be careful when you have those clip brushes up too, so that you don't end up accidentally clipping something and finding yourself wondering where your mesh went. So it's funny actually, I didn't intend to put this much work into the UVs on this, but in the end they've actually came out really nice, and it's just kind of a shame not to go ahead and flesh those out the rest of the way like that. So another consideration in doing the UVs on a model like this is the spacing. So it's kind of visually intuitive to have these things laid out like this where they're side by side, but it really doesn't give us the best spacing. So I'm going to keep those together now like this, and I'm just temporarily grouping this all into one big group, and then I'm going to move all of this so that I pack my UVs as fully into my space as I can. There we go. And now we'll unflatten it. And when we unflatten, it'll also retrieve my original poly groups, but it's going to keep those UVs. And I did flip them. If the UVs get flipped vertically, we can always go into our UV map menu, go down to adjust and hit flip V. And there we go. So there we have some really clean UVs on this. I actually want to do one more change where we spread these guys down the rest of the way. That way I know we're really giving everything the maximum amount of space that it can have. All right. So there we have UVs. I am good with those. I do want to check them. And inside ZBrush, I think this is, I hope this is standard inside ZBrush and not something that I've added in. If I've added it, then it's been a long time since I did. You guys who are fellow ZBrush users, if you would, check me on this. Make sure that this is something that's actually there by default. I've altered all kinds of stuff. There's a folder in here, UV Master Checkers. I think this is in there by default. I might have made it up for myself, though. I don't remember. And I've had a love-hate relationship with checker maps through my entire career, but I'm at a point now where I'm just like, okay, some people expect these to have been applied to stuff, so I will look at stuff now with these on, and there's certain things, certain benefits to it that I have to admit, and I will kind of look at them and use them, in this way. So here I can also see right off the bat that this has given me some UVs. There's actually an issue with my UVs that I'm not real happy about, and that is where I can see my tiles meet. Really don't care for that. That kind of sucks. And I'm not going to stop and fix that right now because I can fix that inside UV Master, but I really don't want to spend much more time talking about UVs and that stuff on this because I really want to get you guys into rigging over in DS. Plus, the way that I personally will fix something like that, I'd probably just send it to Maya. And since I want to make sure this is available as a freebie to you guys too, I am going to fix it, but I'm going to do it really, really quickly. Like, this is going to be crazy, crazy fast fixes on this. So, I'm going to crack open Maya real quick. While I'm in Maya, if you guys have any questions, it's a good time to ask me because I can talk about other stuff while I'm in there. I can pretty much fly blind when I'm in Maya. So let's take a quick look over at the chat and see what's being chattered up about. So, Magic Bug says, "Holy UV, Batman." Yes, yes, truly. Limba Zero says, "I think I need to use Shade 3D for UVs. I only got ZBrush Core." You know, I was pretty sure UV Master was in Core, but I'm not sure anymore. So I'd have to double check on that. I'm going to keep my texture map, my checker map on here for when I send this over to Maya. Let's hit that. You could also do this with Blender. You can go Z over into Blender too. Blender's free. I just have been using Maya forever and a day, so it's kind of what I prefer. But it's very similar tools. Nick says, "I had a recent thing in UV Master where it kept rescaling." I can tell you, odds are, if it was rescaling your UVs, the reason for that was somewhere, even though you may not have seen it, you had a vertex sitting outside unitized UV space, meaning the one square, the square grid. If you had a vertex outside of that and you went into UV Master, when you came back out, it's going to move all of that mesh in UV space to fit inside that tile. So you have to be very, very anal about that. It's one of the reasons you'll see me pop in and out of flatten mode in UV Master sometimes, because rather than just sit there and go over visually each vertex, if I pop out of UV Master and then pop back in, or pop out of flatten and back into flatten, then when I go back into flatten, if something was out of bounds, it's going to move it all, just like you're describing. And that's going to tell me that something happened. And then I know to look. If it doesn't, then I know I'm good. So, let's see. Lobo says there's no UV tools in Core. Man, that sucks. I'm sorry. Let's get in here and get this stuff into place. I'm going to flip this. It does. There's a weird UV flip thing from Maya to ZBrush that's always a little aggravating for me. But let's go ahead and just grab this UV seam down the back. Yeah, it didn't. ZBrush did not place that seam exactly where I wanted it. So I'm just going to cut that away. We're going to move you over. And we're going to move you over like so. Yay. And then I'll just grab these guys like this. And snap that over there. Grab these guys like this. Boom, boom. And snap that over there. And here's this. And this. And this. There we go. So those are all snapped square now. Let's unfold this guy. And then let's relax this down just a touch. Do another unwrap. And then here I'm just snapping UVs so that I can keep that nice square grid. I love the UV editing tools in Maya, just for the record. That's like one of my favorite things about modeling in Maya. It is the big dog for a reason. It is, to me, it's kind of the biggest dog on the block. I love Maya. So let's throw this stuff in here. There we go. There's that. Now let's straighten both of those guys. Boom, boom. Move that out. Here's this one. We'll snap it. This one. We'll snap it. grab these guys, scale them back in, pull this down, come in, and then we're going to do a really big relax on that. Come back here. There we go. A little bit more of that. I kind of go back and forth with this stuff inside here too, so. One more time around these edges. Optimize their spacing just a little bit more. Bear with me for just a moment, folks. This is almost finished. Kind of like how I use that polish in ZBrush, I'm going to use relaxing inside here to get my average vertical space on those vertices down. It's just a neat little trick. And it's just kind of understanding a little bit of math in it, but it makes sense the way that works. So now we can straighten those edges. Grab that. Boom. Nice. Really digging that. Digging the way that's coming out. That is going to be some sexiness right there. So we're going to do the same thing again with my vertical. Straighten that border. Drop back in, and here we are going to get pretty close to square with it. I think that's probably enough for now to make this really work. Let's take a look at how our grid plays across it. We do get a little funkiness around these edges here, so I can see what's up with that. Looks like maybe we just need a little bit of a better spread, which just take a little look. There we go. Okay. So now I'm down the center. There. Oops. What the heck did I just do? There we go. Alright, now. That's a little better. I'm thinking we can probably snap this edge loop right here down and then pick some of these guys. There's just a couple of funky little techniques I like using sometimes that help me get some nice clean UVs. There we go. It's starting to work itself out just a little bit better.
I just want to make sure that I have a nice even spread down the sides of this thing so that we get as little distortion as possible. And I think that should be pretty good. That's going to hold up well for our texturing. Alright, so now let's just move these UVs over. I'm still, see, I get so anal with UVs, guys, and I apologize for that, but I really do. It bugs me. I get so bothered when I see them not being, what I know I want in a given area. It just drives me nuts. Let's try a little bit of that, a little bit of that. I think we can call that good enough for government work. Then I'm going to normalize this, which means it's going to shove it all into normalized UV space. Ding dang darn it. It's still making me mad that I have parallax going on down the center of this. That just angers me. Okay. I know, like, iteration after iteration of doing what I'm doing right here will actually help work that stuff out. So, really am feeling like we're almost there. I know it seems like I'm doing the same thing over and over, but it's because every time I run these commands, it's altering it just a tiny little bit, just a little bit more, moving these guys a little closer and closer to the space that I know I want them in. There we go. I think that is quite livable. Quite livable. Alright, so now let's send that back over to ZBrush. River asks, is there anything you can recommend for learning Maya UV mapping? Prozac? It's weird. Like it's actually not that hard. It's just there's a lot of commands, a lot of little things that it can do. Honestly, my first thing is read the manual. If you read the chapter in the manual on UVs, it's actually going to give you a lot to work from. Right there, that's going to get you a really good start. That's the first place I would go, is actually read the manual. I know it might sound snarky and crappy, but it's really the truth. Like, I don't know if I ever told you guys this, but like the first thing I do when I get a new piece of software, there's two things I do. Usually the first thing I do is I open it and I try to open something in it, and then I just start trying to find ways to break it, like to make it crash. I try to find ways to do things and just immediately drive it as hard as I possibly can in some stupid way that I know has nothing to do with production and everything to do with, can I break this? Then the next thing I do is read the manual. So between those two things, it's like if you break it and you backpedal from it, you probably learn something. And you read the manual, you're going to learn other stuff. And you put the two together, you actually end up learning a piece of software really, really quickly. It's kind of this stupid pattern I developed a long time ago, but it has proven actually quite useful. So, looking at this now, I think I want to merge these two UV sets, these two UV shells together. I think that would be cool. Let's just merge that all together. It's one nice big happy chunk of cloth. Just there. Click. And then up. Come here. Come here. You know you want it. There you go. And there we go. And that. And that. Cool. No, I don't want to do that. Why am I doing that? I don't know. I don't know anymore. Somebody straighten me out here. And again, I am OCD with my UVs. Extremely so. Okay, I do think those are the best we've gotten so far. I like that. I like that a lot. Let's send that over. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. I like the single line seam down the back. Very, very cool. Now, of course, we can see that our map is flipped vertical in here, so I'm just going to do that. And now everything is aligned properly. It all looks quite tasty. Quite tasty. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in the actual texturing here, because we could spend 2 or 3 hours just in texturing something like this to make it look real nice. I am going to shoot a quick texture on this. Almost forgot. We're still working on the model that's the clone in UV Master, so we need to copy the UVs from that. Get copied right here. Then switch back over to our actual model and paste those UVs. So now I can turn up my subdivisions, and it still has those UVs. Let's subdivide this 2 more times so we get enough resolution to hold some texturing. Then let's flood this with black. And I'm just going to use the surface menu to do my texturing on this real quick. So let's pop into the surface menu, turn on noise. Let's zoom it in and switch this to UV. And then go into the noise plugin. And let's do a quick weave. And I want to get rid of the basic noise. Let's run that plugin scale down. So there we have a nice tight weave on this. And then you can play around with this curve right here, and it's a really good way to affect how a weave looks, just the tightness of it in a different way. Because if I zoom in on that and I show you, if we squeeze that, we're playing with the light and dark values in that pattern. Okay. So now let's come back out. I don't like the color it's trying to shove into that. I really just want to keep it black and white. That way we can alter the colors really easily with the material inside ZBrush, or excuse me, inside that studio. So I want to turn off SUV, and let's apply that to the mesh so that we get a basic texture in place. And I noticed over in the chat there was a little bit of mention about those UV maps and how they were flipped and all that kind of stuff. That's something that I know certain folks, certain places, sometimes testing,
will get very itchy about, they'll call them reversed UVs or flipped UVs. The funny thing about it is if you're using polypaint to texture, the way I like to texture in ZBrush, they really don't matter, because your textures are going to go on however you put them on, and they're going to flood into those UVs, and they end up looking normal when they display on the model. The only real reason to worry about whether things are flipped or not is if people are going to try to paint textures using the old Photoshop template method. And that, I have some opinions about that, but I won't get into it. The checker thing, looking at the checkers and texture tiles and stuff on there, I do like that because it shows me if I have stretching anywhere. If it were up to me, I wouldn't give a crap either way about whether they're quote-unquote reversed or not. Because you could have, let's say you have a pair of shoes, okay? If you don't separate those shoes left to right, you're effectively getting, you could model one shoe and then mirror it and use the same UVs, same textures on both shoes. Now you're going to see it mirrored, but if it's a clean pair of shoes and you don't need to see asymmetry, then you're actually maximizing the bang for your buck you get out of your texturing, because you're able to cover more visual surface space with the same texture across two symmetrical objects. But one of those is going to show up as quote-unquote reversed. That kind of bugs me a little bit that that's kind of a thing for some people. I've adapted to it because you adapt to what the market calls for, but it's always going to bug me a little bit. So that's just kind of my 2 cents worth on that. And Logan's like, well, plenty of people still use Photoshop to make textures, and there are people somewhere still in the world who read by candlelight too. I don't mean to be mean about that. I'm just like, man, the Photoshop method for that, there are a lot of drawbacks to that, and so many. And even if you're not using ZBrush, like I know there's texture painting inside Blender that is crazy powerful. There's so many tools now that we have that there's certain things that are just kind of, to me, they're really starting to show their age, and it's just kind of a thing. It's kind of a big thing, and it's just a thing for me because I'm very much about it's like, how can I do this stuff to the absolute best of my ability? So I'm always going to be looking at those tools and stuff like that. Logie said, he's like, you can't afford ZBrush. Hey man, grab Blender. Look at the texture tools in it. I swear, it's like you guys can really do some cool stuff with that, and it's something I might get into sometime, just as a means of opening that door for folks. If you don't have the money for ZBrush yet, that's something to look into. So. Anyway, I need to get back on track here. We've got our texture pushed into this from the surface noise, and then this is really just kind of a thing to get that noise in there. I'm going to set my UV map to 4096, and then we'll hit Create, New from Polypaint. And that should have also pushed a little bit of surface roughness into place. So if I turn my subdivision all the way down and I go into normal map, I can now generate a nice normal map from that. And from there, we're good to go. So I can save these out. Like I said, just doing a quick rough texture on this, just so that we have something. So let's send this out, and so here's I'm going to call this CGB
long dress TXTR. And hopefully my JPEG plugin's working right now. It's apparently not. That's okay. That's fine. Let's just save that out as something else then. Okay. And that's fine. Let's save our normal map out. As soon as I clone that, I'll export that. Okay. So there's that. So there we have our model completed, our UVs completed, our textures completed. Now let's send this thing over to DAZ Studio. Okay. Now if I send that over with texture maps turned on in here, then it's going to try to apply them inside DAZ Studio. And the thing about that, it's kind of cool because you'll see it live, but then the place that it's getting those textures from will actually be from where GoZ puts them when it exports. So it's okay for the short term, but you'll end up clearing that cache out eventually. So that's why I make sure that I output my textures so I can just manually go put them where they really belong. So now I need to reassociate myself with my GoZ plugin back to DAZ Studio. So I'll hit the R right here, hit DAZ Studio, and Control G. So we'll send that over, and I'm going to go ahead and allow it to create a subdivision surface. Why is the G3 male in there? Let's delete him and do this again. That's not what I needed. So she's loading. Come on, girl. You know you want to come on in. There she be. All right, so now let's send that girl back over again. Okay, and convert to subdivision surface. There we go. So now we have our dresses in here. Textures are on it. You will see if I select that dress, I go to surfaces. There's no name on the material, so I'll go into the geometry editor and just double click there to give that a name. I'm going to just call that dress. And then if I hold the mouse over the thumbnail here in the diffuse color channel, you'll see the path on that reads C users public, blah, 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 all that stuff. That's what I was talking about a second ago. So I'm going to go ahead and kick that out. I don't really need to see that texture on here anyway. So let's just get rid of that. Okay, and then I actually need to go ahead and set up a runtime for this, or set up a library for this. So let's come back out here and do that. It's kind of a process. You guys see me do this a lot, and it's not a bad thing because I think it's good to see this stuff repeated. So I'm going to grab my folder template, my product template right here, okay, and then I'll just go inside the folder where I'm building this, and I'm going to drag all these guys in here. And I'm also going to go ahead and convert these two textures over from PSDs to JPEG. So let's grab that, JPEG. And I want the quality on that at maximum so that we don't get weird artifacting from compression. Okay. And let's push the, let's run auto levels on that, and then we will save it as a JPEG. Boom. There we go. And now I don't need those PSDs anymore. So now let's take our textures and we're going to put them in our texture folder. And, okay, I don't need a figures folder inside this library because we're going to be working to people, Genesis 3 female. Okay. And the rest of that can be altered once we're inside the library, inside Dash Studio. So now let's go to our Dash Studio formats. We'll add a base directory, and let's go find that. I think I'm somewhere in the vicinity. Here we go. So long dresses, and select folder. So now we're set up to finish this out. Let's go. We don't need accessories, so we're going to right-click and delete that. We don't need hair. Delete that. Poses. Delete that. Props. I'm going to delete that. All we want in this little library is our clothing. So then here we'll right-click and do vendor name, CGBytes, and then product name, CGB long dress. Okay. And materials folder is there just in case we want it. I'm not saving any special materials right now, so I'm going to delete that for the moment. I like to have my library as clean as possible. That way I don't end up with weird folders and things in places that confuse me later. So now we're all set up and ready to get this thing finished up. So let's go apply our normal map. So I'll browse, and we'll go to, where are we going to? Seminars. Where'd we go? Long dresses. Here we go. Long dresses. Runtime textures. CGBytes long dress. So there's my normal map, and then diffuse color. And of course, this is just in the old 3D Light shader that is the default on here. I really kind of despise 3D Light. And I tend to just go ahead and convert everything to IRA right off the bat. So I'm going to do that. And the nice thing, though, is that diffuse and normal, if you have those in place and then you convert over to IRA, it changes those over for you. So like from diffuse to base color and all that stuff. And it's kind of nifty, too. I mentioned the Substance stuff earlier. If you start working with Substance Designer and Substance Painter, those kind of much more closely follow this paradigm because they are based in PBR, physics-based rendering, which 3D Light is not. And physics-based rendering is kind of like light from heaven. It's so good. So good. Any physics-based renderer is awesome, and IRA just blows my mind. It's what brought me to Dash Studio finally. So now that we have our textures applied, we have the dress in place, we have our library set up, all the front work is done. Now we get the fun part, and that is getting into the rigging here, which we have. I'm probably going to run over a little bit today, but I'm going to try not to. The stuff that I want to cover on rigging, part of why I wanted to show you guys so much on modeling is the stuff that I wanted to show you on rigging today actually doesn't take that long to do. It's not that hard. And then next week I'm going to be going into the more advanced aspects of it. So, this really is a two-part thing, like we do most of the time now. We'll do a subject, we'll do the introduction one week, and then the advanced parts of it the following. So right now we're going to be going into the rigging of the dress. We're going to do the basics of this, show you how to get some supplemental bones, some extra bones in there for controlling the length of the dress, and just talk about some of the considerations with that, and really show you how to kind of get up and running with a basic approach to this. So the next thing we need to do is go into Edit, Figure, Transfer Utility, and our source is going to be Genesis 3 female. Our target is going to be Dress 1, Topo 1. It's still got the naming from ZBrush. That's fine for now. We can change that later. Under Projection Template, I'm going to choose Dresses. And there's dresses, knee length. It really, honestly, doesn't make that much of a difference. There's a few things under the hood that it sets up there, but they're not entirely necessary most of the time. It's not a big deal. So we're going to have fit, source to figure. All this stuff is going to be left on. Let's go ahead and hit accept. So now we should have the dress is fitted. And if we come into the Genesis 3 female, go to her pose controls. I like using these as just a quick place to go to for checking some basics from an auto rig. So we're really close right off. That's a nice thing to have. Just the way that works is really cool. I'm sorry. If you're using this stuff and you haven't done that at least once, you're missing all the fun. You know, that's so much fun. And I know it's totally infantile, but you know, little things like that make me smile. So I'll go through and check a bunch of rotations. We're going to look at the arms. So all of that tends to be working pretty well right out of the box. That's nice. That means that we really don't have a whole lot to sweat when it comes to the rest of it. Is just adding the extra bones in and all that. So let's see. We need to go to our scene tab, and then if we open up our dress in the scene tab, let's go to pelvis. Most of the extra bones, actually all the extra bones I'm going to be adding will be children of the pelvis, and so let's go into our joint editor tool, and here you can see the nice thing about the projection or the templates. One thing that they do that I do like is they only shove in certain bones. They only shove in the bones that they consider needed for that particular item. I do wish, and if this is a thing and somebody else knows it, please let me know. I do wish they would open things up where you could make your own templates for garments with the transfer utility. And if that's a thing, I actually should ask around a couple folks and see if I can find out if there's a way to make new templates for that, because that would be really, really useful. So from there, let's go into the pelvis bone, and let's just zoom in on the pelvis. And the way that I like making my supplemental bones is starting out with the thigh, and then so I'll select like the left thigh bend, that bone, and right click it and go to create, and I'm going to create a sibling bone. So then you'll see left thigh bend 2 is created, and then I will, with that selected, I'll right click and under edit go to propagate translations, and then I'm also going to auto align the node. What that'll do is that will make the end point of the node follow its end point or any bone downstream from it. So then the next thing I need to do is rename that. So let's right click and go edit, rename, and this is going to be L thigh dress top. Dress top. Okay. And then I'll right click, go to create child bone. This is going to be L thigh dress. Let's make this one mid. We'll do 3 joints down on it with a rotation order of YZX. And I'll go to create, right click and create child bone one more time. This one's going to be L thigh dress bottom. And YZX for rotation order. Hit accept, and I'll drag that down. So these are really kind of roughly analogous to the thigh bend, thigh twist, and shin bones. And if I really wanted to get super granular, I might even add, and sometimes in my own stuff I'll do this, I'll add a secondary bone for the bottom
and then maybe another bone down here for the foot. So we end up with about a 5-bone deep rig for the dress. For this one, I'm going to keep it at 3 though, just going 3 down the chain. It's simple, and it should work out really well. So, and you know, sometimes you don't want to overcomplicate things. So let's keep this a 3-bone rig. Now I'm going to go over to my right thigh, create sibling bone, and since I'm really stupid when it comes to certain things, I have a bad habit of like typos and things. It's always driven me nuts trying to remember what I name things. So what I'll do is go to L thigh dress top and just click on it, copy that name, and then go into my, go select the right thigh, the joint that's going to have to correspond with that, and then go to edit, rename node, and I'll paste it, and then just replace the R at the beginning. Or replace the L at the beginning with an R, sorry. So there's that bone in place. Now I'm going to create child bone. And actually, before I do that, I want to go ahead and grab the naming from our mid joint right there. Go to create child bone. And if you notice, I copied that all but the L. That way I can just type an R and hit paste. YZX, there we go. Drag that down. And then I'll repeat that for the next one. Copying all but the L from its name. Then right click, create child bone. R, paste. Actually didn't need to do it that way. There we go. Then hit accept. And so now those have identical names. So if I select L thigh dress top, and I right click and go to edit, mirror joints, I want selected and recursive, and you'll see now they snap into place symmetrically. Okay. So that gives me my bones down the sides. Now I want to go to the pelvis and create, actually let's go to the pelvis. Let's do this one dead center. If I create it as a sibling off the thighs again for the front bones, I would have to still move it to the center, whereas the pelvis is already centered. So I can right click that, hit create child bone, and we're going to call this one, let's see, front dress top. Okay. And this time, just to keep my naming nice and clean, I'll copy front and dress. Okay. Now let's pull that joint down, move it forward. Oh. And it's really easy to accidentally select the underlying figure instead of the clothing. So be very conscious of that while you're working, because you can end up really screwing some stuff up big time if you actually do that. Okay. So here's a front dress top. Then I'm going to create child bone, front dress mid with a YZX rotation order. Then create another child bone, front dress bottom, again with a YZX rotation order. Now I'll go back to front dress top. I'm going to right click, hit create sibling bone. Pull that to the rear. Right click, edit, rename. And this one's going to be rear dress top. Then create child bone, rear dress mid. And one more child bone, rear dress bottom. All right. So now we have all of the bones that we really need for some pretty crazy dress rigging. And this will be the basis for next week's discussion, where we go into a lot of the advanced side of what you can do with this. Where I'm going to go next with it is breaking up the dress into some groups so we get our control handles that we need for each of these. And then we'll do some quick skin weight editing on this, and that's going to kind of wrap us up. So I'm expecting, let's see, it's 3 o'clock right now. We usually end around 3, so I'm probably going to end up going over by about 20 or 30 minutes. I hope that's cool with everybody. Right now I'm going to switch over to my geometry editor on the dress, and I'm going to change my view to a wire texture shaded. I also want to make sure that my dress has its resolution at base. And actually, I think I want to come out of that wire texture, because my texture that I have on here making it a little hard to look at. Let's go just a wire shaded. Okay. And now I want to go through and start making some selections, some groups here that will end up corresponding with our new joints. So here, let's select that edge loop. And everything I'm going to be working with is going to be from the waist down. So that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and just hide everything that I don't need. And let's go ahead and put all of this in our pelvis group first. So I'll come over into my geometry editor, and there should be, actually it should go in the hip group, even though the hip group, it's a little misleading. There's a hip geometry group, but it's assigned to the pelvis bone. So we'll put that in that hip group. So now we've assigned those to that group. And actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and let's just go ahead and create a separate group for this, or even just a selection set. Let's do a selection set. Let's do length as a selection set. That way we can always get back to this exact selection. Okay. So now from here, I'm going to turn on symmetry. May or may not work well because our shape is not perfectly symmetrical. I really just want this so that I can select this loop running down the sides like this. And then I'm going to expand that selection out a bit so that we have these different strips selected. And I'm temporarily going to hide those. Okay, so I'll hide those guys. And now I can make a quick selection here that's going to be really clean. And that's going to be front dress top. And then I'll turn that off. And we'll make another selection here. This is going to be front dress mid. Okay. And then the rest of that strip will be front dress bottom. Now let's go get the back of the dress. Excuse me. Rear dress top. Then rear dress mid. And now rear dress bottom. So now that we have those groups made, we could go down here to the selection set for length,
turn it off and back on, and we get all of that back. Now we can very easily go over here to our rear and front groups and turn those off. So now we're only working down the sides. And that's going to make it much, much easier to create nice, symmetrical, clean looking groups. Okay. So now I'm going to start from the middle here with a quick selection out of that. Maybe start a little further down. Let's do this. Okay. And again, I'm going to use my selection sets. We'll just call this mid for now. I'll end up getting rid of those in the end. These are just quick utilities that I use for working with my mesh. The reason I made that is so that I can get this central kind of knee area selection back really easily. I'm going to right click right now and go to selection mode, lasso select. I'm going to make sure symmetry is turned off and deselect the polygons on that right hand side. And so now I'll create a group from selected, and that's going to be my L thigh dress mid. And the reason I'm starting out with the ones in the middle is that once I have the group made, then I can hide it and grab the top and bottom really easily. So it's just kind of a workflow process that makes this whole process go much more smoothly. So let's see, where did that go? It's this one. So see, now from there, I can just make a quick selection out of those. And we have L thigh dress bottom. I probably don't even need the word thigh on there. I don't know why I did that. I think it was just because of I don't know, just a brain fart at the moment. It could have just been left dress or whatever, but that's fine. We'll run with that as it is. Okay, there's that. Now we can grab this one. And you can always go back in and change those names after the fact too. Dress top. There we go. So now that we have those hidden, if we click on our plus sign down here on that selection group, it will only select the polygons that we're showing from that. So now we'll go right click and R thigh dress mid. Here we have R thigh dress bottom. And our last poly group is going to be R thigh dress top. Okay, and now we can show all our polygons. Right click and show polygons. The nice thing about having these little quick groups down here, we don't need this one anymore. We can just remove that one. That's going to allow us to hide this stuff up here, so we don't really have to have that visible and run risks of messing with it, since we can see that our skin weights on that were good already. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save this figure, CGB long dress. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it. So CGB long dress, Windows CGBytes, CGB long dress. So there we have that saved with those joints and everything in place. Geometry's been assigned. The groups have been set up. Now we need to assign that geometry to those joints so that we can make selections easier. And I like to go ahead and do that at this point in the process. You can really do it at any time, but I like to do it now because that makes it easier for me when I work with the skin weights to make my selections. Because then I can just right click and switch those different bones. Since those joints aren't in the default Genesis 3 female, you can end up screwing up your selections really easily in the viewport if you don't have that stuff already in place. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to L thigh dress top, and we're going to be in the joint editor, and we're going to set our selection groups. Okay, So, and it should be right there. And we're just going to walk them through the rest of these with that. And to the front. And last, the rear. Okay, and one last little thing I want to do is remove this default group that ZBrush puts in there because we don't need it. And I'm going to save this one more time. Okay, so now all of that stuff is, all of that geometry is associated with the bones, so we can make our selections very easily. Now it's time to work on those skin weights. So I'm going to pop over into my geometry editor, expand this selection up just a little bit, and then hide unselected because I don't want to work with that stuff. I can also lock those values in the skin weight editor, but I actually prefer working with it with geometry hidden rather than having it locked in the skin weight editor, because I've found that sometimes that has a weird effect on the way things like smoothing commands and stuff like that will work. So now let's go over to our skin weight editor. Node weight map brush, and I'm going to start with the front dress top. Actually, I want to make sure that I get a selection first. So let's go select the front dress pieces. I'm going to go ahead and select all three of those, and now switch back over to my weight map brush. I'm going to expand that stuff out to where it really covers the front. Even though our selection, our handles are right down the middle, I want to have a little more range than that. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate, using that little gizmo there, rotate that front dress top bone just a little tiny bit. Even though it's not going to do anything yet, I like having that in place so I can see what it's doing as I paint. And this brush operates on screen space, so if I zoom out, if I wanted to just brush over a large area, I can zoom out and the brush stays the same size relative to the screen. So I can do that. And then let's grab some of that. And then I'm going to smooth select it. Now let's grab the next joint, rotate it a little, and let's just go ahead and rotate all three of these guys. Okay, so now here's front dress mid. Now I'm going to zoom way out. And let's even turn up the value a little bit on that. And let's now go to bottom, front dress bottom, zoom out, grab that. Then I'm going to smooth that. Pardon me. Might need to grab a little bit more weight on the mid, and then we'll smooth it. Okay. Now I'm going to expand my selection a little bit. I'm also going to turn on use symmetry for the moment. And I'm holding the control key down as I paint so that it just spreads these smooth shapes out, or smooth skin weights out. In the end, these are going to be really soft values. That way everything kind of flows. So that's pretty solid. Save frequently.
So now if I grab that top front dress joint, I can see that I have probably a little too much weight on that front, on those joints up here at the top. That's okay. Just paint that out. Each of these. So that generally gets our front strip in place. So now I'm going to invert that selection and do the rear. So let's just grab those joints, rotate them out. I'm just kind of watching their bounding boxes as I rotate them. So now I'll start with redress top. And we give quite a bit of weight to everything downstream there. Then mid. And then bottom. And once we have those basic weights in there, I'll expand my selection a little bit and start smoothing. I'm going to cancel that. I don't want symmetry turned on right now while I'm smoothing this. Turn it back on while I'm painting. There we go. Now, just as with the front, I'm going to expand my selection a little further and do some manual smoothing. There, a rear dress is looking pretty solid. I might want to remove a little bit of influence from some of this stuff. Okay, and let's save that. So now we're ready to work with our joints down the sides. So let's just go make a selection out of those. Let's see, I'll dress bottom, I'll dress top, if I dress top. I might want to double check something here. It's interesting that it put my bounding box down there. I hope I didn't accidentally name my groups wrong. That's quite possible, though. Top, mid, bottom. No, they're good. For some reason, sometimes DS can be wonky about those bounding boxes, so it can look like it can look like things aren't working when they actually are. Okay, so let's go grab those groups. L thigh dress bottom, mid, top. Okay. And I'm also going to grab the groups for the right side too, because I want to try to keep my work as symmetrical as I can. So now let's swing these joints out, and I should be able. Oh, before I do that, something I had forgotten to do that it just dawned on me that I had forgotten. I want to make sure I do this. Is I want to go into the joint editor and right-click, hit edit. Right-click, go to memorize figure rigging. That way, all this stuff is always going to return back to its proper starting point. Okay. So let's grab these three joints, swing them out. And then I should be able to mirror
the selected joints from left to right, and we should see the same thing. Cool. And then from there, it's time to start painting skin weights. So I'm going to paint on the left side first. Just zoom out. And you can be really sloppy with this part of it. It really doesn't have to be very pretty while you're getting this stuff just started. Now let's expand that selection a little bit. And I'm just going to start manually smoothing. Not really worrying about where it intersects with the underlying figure just yet. At the moment, I'm just looking at trying to get some nice smooth deformations happening. And you can see there, I made my selection go all the way up to this shared center line. That way I know that I'm not going to be really affecting that a whole lot. I don't want to do that. Let's get a little bit more going on here in the middle, and then the dress top. And so then from there, I'm going to, and this is experimental. This is always an experiment. It's a good idea to save the figure before I do this. I'm going to try to copy my skin weights across. And I think you guys have probably seen this before where those don't always work out. So I'm going to give it a shot though, because if they do work out, it's kind of awesome. Let's go to weight map symmetry. I want to go entire figure left to right. And this is one of those glorious moments when it works. So yay. Yay, yay, yay. That's awesome. So now we just want to go through and do a few quick tweaks. Let's go down the rear of the dress. Okay. Come back here. Top. There we go. And I'm going to turn use symmetry on for a minute and just kind of go through and finesse these out. And you can spend a lot of time working with these, and I encourage you to do that because I mean that's just a quality thing. It's nice when those skin weights are solid. I'm not going to labor on them too long here because we do need to bring this to a close here in just a couple of minutes. But this is really a good starting point. It's actually a pretty solid piece. I mean, you can use this as is really, really well. It's quite functional. So let's come around here. Let's look at the front for just a little bit. Just going through and kind of smoothing some things out where we worked on the sides for a while. And see where I have those groups made, we can then right click and get to our bones here very easily. So it's kind of handy. I am curious. I feel like my groups aren't quite right. No, they are. That's weird. Oh, okay. So there's our dress front. Let's just. Got to be careful with that symmetry command. Sometimes it can be fickle and do weird things. So
there we are. I would call that pretty darned effective. So just a little bit more editing back and forth. Like I said, you'll spend some time finessing it, but that's kind of the gist of it. So there we added bones, we set up groups, we did a lot of cool stuff there right alongside modeling it, and ended up with a pretty effective dress in about 2.5 hours time. So obviously you'd want to take a little more time and do more detail on the textures, spend more time on the bones and things like that. I mean, this is very much the run and gun encapsulated approach to this, but that's a nice a pretty decent end product for something that only took about 2.5 hours to do. So let's see. So let's go ahead and unhide the rest of these. Show all polygons. Let's go back to texture shaded. So from there, if we were posing the figure, you would. I might want to choose to add some polygons back into the original thigh joints in here, just so we could select on through to the thighs a little easier in the viewport. That's kind of a personal thing. It's like, you might want to do that, you might not. And there are some things that we're going to go over in the advanced session that will talk about ways to link up what we have here with the thighs, so that you can use what we've done to make this follow and do some really nifty movement stuff. But as it stands, we have pretty much everything that we need right here. So it's very handy like that. Nice natural movement on that. And let's save it. All right. So that is going to bring us to a close for this week. That is the first half of our two-parter on working with long dresses. Next week, we're going to get into stuff that deals with sculpting morphs, combining morphs with rigging-based movements, and a lot of little kind of the icing on the cake, the polish, the fun stuff. I dig that part of it. So, I have a tendency to try and put a lot of those kind of little things into a piece that I'm working on. I just, it's my experience with the users and everything that really appreciate some of those little thoughts that go into the way things rig and move and stuff like that. So next week we're going to be covering a lot of that and getting into some pretty nifty stuff. So anyway, as we bring this to a close, if anybody has any questions or comments that they want to fire off, I did notice in the chat when I was talking about those templates, somebody mentioned that Sickle, probably talking about Sickle Yield, has some templates up. So I'm going to go look those up when I get off here, because that's a cool thing. I'd like to share a resource like that with you guys. Or if someone on here has already found that, be sure to post it in our group on Facebook. I'd like to see you guys get a little more active in that group. It's a handy place. It's a handy little touch point for all of us to kind of work together, share some ideas, and share what you guys learn. So also really very cool to see some of the products and things you guys are coming out with, that look like they were possibly a result of some of the stuff you picked up in these seminars. So anyway, that really wraps it up for this week. As always, thanks to CGBytes and the folks there for making this stuff happen and giving you guys a really cool place to take products to, and providing the kind of resources that we can bring to you guys for learning and just expanding what you can do as artists. Thanks to everybody who came out, and it's very cool to see you guys hanging out here with us every week and learning and doing this stuff. So that's going to bring it to a close. I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions or anything in the chat, which I'm going to take as a good thing. I'm going to assume that means that I was pretty clear today. Either that or I bored you guys to sleep. So anyway, I will see you guys next week on the Google Hangout. I do want to go ahead and kind of forward announce that after next week, I'm thinking we're going to make a change to when we schedule these. I am leaning toward a Wednesday evening session, probably around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm putting that out there right now to you guys as it's not set in stone yet, but that's what I'm thinking. And so if anyone has any thoughts or comments on that, please message me or post about them on Facebook or in the comments here. Either one's fine. I need to hear from you guys on that. I feel like we have a really good group of folks who are regulars for this Friday 1 o'clock time slot, but when we started these, we actually had more viewers attending. And the thing is, when we started, we were doing them on Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. So it was either Wednesday or Thursday nights at 10 p.m. I can't remember now which. But we had more actual attendees. Now, we get a lot of watches after these things go up, after we get some good views after the stuff is done. But I'd like to see the number of people actually here grow. So there's a few things that we need in order to make that happen. We need, obviously, likes and shares, all that sort of thing. We really need a lot more sharing going on of the videos and really seeing the stuff get perpetuated into the DS community. But then also, I'm seriously thinking about moving it to a different time slot to maybe open it up for, for that range of people who were here at the beginning but can't seem to be here for this time slot. So I do want to hear from you folks on that. Don't hesitate to let me know your thoughts on it. And so a decision is going to be made. It will be announced next week and will be probably kicking in either the week after that or 2 weeks down the line. One way or another, the announcement on that will come next week, though. So anyway, just wanted to give you guys the heads up on that. Thanks again for everybody for being here. I hope you guys have some fun. And as always, go make some cool stuff. I will see y'all around.